Roland, and this is James, and we met when we were training to be counsellors together. So yeah, we're here just to talk about our faith and our understanding of faith and our experience with faith, and explore that as honestly as we can, and hopefully make it okay for you guys to explore your experiences with faith, and make those experiences okay, whatever they are. James, we were just talking now about how to phrase it. I guess pushing into things that are hard, and and how we can have things inside us that are pulling us back, kind of retreating into the shell, and how we can also have things around us, so kind of the external pressures to also kind of in a way stay in the shell. And I think we both have similar or parallel experiences going on in different ways in that way. Yeah, and we thought, well, we might as well start recording, as we often do in our conversations. Why are we not recording this? So yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything or go on with anything from that.
Yeah, I suppose just to give a bit of background to it, we were sort of talking about becoming successful in certain areas, or how what we would perceive as like fulfilling a goal, I suppose, or a desire, and how as you said, like internal and external pressures kind of conspire to prevent that, including our own our own ability to self-sabotage.
What are those internal and external factors? Should we spell that out a bit more?
Exactly, it's a good point. We looked at a little bit at so for example, I hope to sort of use a bit more of my creativity in my life. I know that it feeds me and I enjoy it, and it brings like joy and whatnot for myself, as well as like peace and a sense of achievement. And so thinking, okay, well, can I do that more? Can I do that as less of a hobby and more as work, and something that could generate income? And there are certain things inside me that prevent that from manifesting, like procrastination and distraction and all of these sorts of things that are maybe triggered by a fear of it working in myself, or a fear of achieving, or the phrase I used was, if I don't try, I can't fail, which is very much been like a kind of overriding, I suppose, script for me that I'm really going to be mixing up the whole counselling phrases here.
Called pluralism.
Pluralism. I love it. Yeah, pluralism. Yeah, very much like a. So there's that, and additionally there are external factors such as family and friends, but particularly people who have been around when you in your upbringing. We looked at in our counselling studies, family therapy, and this concept that within a family you might have one person who is the angry one. So in a certain situation, if there is a trigger, they will get angry, and as a result, other people in the family don't feel they need to get angry, and that anger is carried by that person, or the anger is sort of like born by that person in the family. Additionally, you might have the person who gets upset or emotional, the person who reacts a different way, and again, maybe not so obvious. There might be the one who's successful, or the one who never really achieves their dreams, or the one who is always just supporting the others, and this sort of thing. And these roles can be kind of different across different families. but we tend to stick to role. And I'm just thinking about my own family in this, and how that we tend to stick to role to the point where we will almost do things to fulfill that. And by do things, I mean it's like a subconscious reverting to type, if you like. And it does make me wonder if taken out of that environment, how much we would continue in that. And when we were talking earlier, and I'm just chucking in all of my random thoughts that were floating around, it reminded me of the part in the Bible where Jesus says I can't remember if he says it or somebody else says that a prophet is never accepted in their hometown or their place of origin. Because we're so known for who we are, we're so kind of set in that mold that when we start to break that mold, that other people around us can't accept that. So you have to leave. You have to move away. So yeah, it's interesting. It does make me wonder about things and about myself. Not to the point of changing anything, but to wondering, which I'm prone to do.
Are you, James? I'd never noticed that. Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I also love that you've gone from family therapy or systemic therapy and like a bit of CBT or what's going on in, and then the Bible. Just
the
stick in
Bible,
the
yeah,
Bible
just
there.
stick that in there. There's a random verse I found that seems to fit. Just jam it in there.
No, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
This is very us, isn't it? It's very us.
Very us, yeah.
And what I there's a few things there that I really liked. That was and I also think that that reference to Bible is kind of referencing it back to our faith somehow. Like our faith is mixed in there, and maybe we can explore that in a bit. But it's good to start with where we're at, I guess. I mean, that was our conversation, wasn't it? So, and you kind of said, I love this. You said about like when we were talking about the fear of failure. But you also said in what you're saying, the fear of success. That what if I'm successful? What would that like? And I think that's so fascinating that we, it's not necessarily the fear of failure that which we're quite used to. I feel like that's kind of reeled off quite often. That it can be that we're afraid of failing, but also we can be afraid of succeeding, and how, like what does success mean to us? Does it? And particularly, I'm thinking, and then you talk about the external pressures and being in a system and being in a family, and that sense of, oh, this is how I find my place in my family. This is how I belong here. That the fear of success may be fear of disrupting that family, or of getting negative feedback from that family, or something from there. And what was coming to my mind is how powerful. I was reading a book that was reminding me about the bits of the brain, like the three-part model of the brain, where you've got kind of the old kind of reptile brain, which is kind of like the flight, freeze, fight response, or flop, or everything else.
Area,
the instinctive area, and then you've got kind of the, I think, like the mammalian brain, which is kind of like needing to belong, and needing to be in it, like social belonging.
Sometimes called the emotional brain,
the emotional brain. And then you've got the like the prefrontal cortex, etc. I can't remember what it's called, but the thinking brain, if you like, I guess.
The human side,
and just how strong that emotional brain
Mm.
kind of kicks in and is always running. Like, we might not be conscious of it, but it's running in the background. And in order for me to belong in my family,
Mm.
I've got to hold these roles. I've got to hold these patterns,
Mm.
and how that can feed into our fear of success.
Yeah, yeah, because it disrupts that sense of belonging. It disrupts that
Yeah.
emotional side, that the sense that well, this is it. I know my place. I know my role, and when I fulfill this role, I fulfill this place. I get, there's transactional things going on there, isn't there? That when I'm here, I am loved. I belong. I am a part of something greater.
Yeah.
But if I stop doing that, or I do something different,
Yeah.
there's that real unknown of whether you'll still belong, whether you'll still be there and
Yeah.
accepted. Yeah,
Yeah. And there's
that's
like
really
two
good.
levels to that in the
Mm,
family, isn't there? There's like the explicit,
mm,
there's like the implicit level, which I think is what we're talking about. Of,
mm,
you have a role, and everybody kind of wants you to stay in that role because it
yeah, yeah,
maintains the balance, and it's what
mm,
we know, and this is how we've all found our roles. So don't
yeah,
disrupt the jigsaw, sort of thing.
yeah, yeah.
But there's also, I feel like there can be an explicit level of that can be that can confuse the implicit level, or kind of be in
Mm,
contradiction to it. So like there can be, oh, why aren't you trying this? Or, why aren't you more of a success? Or why aren't you
mm,
finding your feet a bit more? Or why, or kind of general notions of wanting you to do whatever you want, or
mm,
become whatever you want. And that can kind of mask what might be happening at the implicit level.
mm.
Or it can just kind of, you get that they call it a double bind, don't they?
Yeah.
I think where it's like one level it's like, why aren't you more of a success, or why aren't
Mm,
you more, whatever, financially stable,
mm.
whatever. And at the implicit level, it's kind of, but you got to have this role, and
Mm.
and we're not going to let you. We're going to try.
But
There's a bit of undercutting or undermining if you step
that's
out
it.
of that role,
Mm, mm,
uh, which I think is. For me, I think there's a sense of, oh, that's really rubbish. It's really rubbish and really annoying. And
yeah.
there's a bit of like, why people in this system, why you like that.
Mm,
Um, and I think maybe anger is helpful in that process, to kind of, as a bit of separation, like you were talking about, that sort
mm,
of separating away and putting in the boundaries or the blocks.
mm.
Um,
Almost as an agent of change within it.
yeah,
Yeah. Mm,
yes, yeah. Um, which again is interesting, depending on how
mm,
anger is seen in that family
mm.
system and who's allowed to be angry.
Exactly. Exactly. It's so yeah,
Yeah,
so complex, isn't it? Yeah.
it is.
That's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, and there's also a side that's like, well, it's helpful to know this. Like, it's helpful
Mm,
for me to know why I procrastinate from
mm,
doing something that would actually get me somewhere.
mm,
Because then I start noticing when I'm doing it, and then I might
mm.
be able to just
Do something different.
do something different and push
Yeah.
my head out the shell a little bit.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. Does make me wonder. I think I end up with this sort of confused mishmash of things all churning together, and realizing that like all I end up doing is I start recognizing patterns within it, and noticing that. So as you said before, like I've chucked in a little bit of all different types of counselling in there,
mm,
and a bit of the Bible and so on, and it makes me wonder. So then is that is it because this script within myself is so powerful that I'm now looking for affirmation of it, or confirmation of it, I should say, in every place I look and everything that I do, that just then gives me permission to still be like I am. Does that make sense? So it's almost like an even bigger or more deeper sense of like I'm stuck in my ways. And it makes me think that, you know, I know that it's not true. I know that I can change things, but even small changes seem really, really challenging to do, and really quite big. So recently at work, I've been talking to people, and one of my colleagues said something really interesting, and it's going to be really challenging, but I'm going to practice this, because like work's a really nice microcosm that's, you know, they know me, but not so well that I'm set. If you like, I'm not like, I'm still malleable enough within that as a person. But he said, don't. It was a phrase he picked up. He said, "Don't be an NPC." This is from gaming. An NPC is a non-playable character. Um, so don't be somebody who's just like uh, um, working to other people's scripts. Don't just keep asking what next, what next, what next, but say, this is what I'm going to do, or I am doing this to X, Y, Z. You know, like you become like take a bit more control over what you're doing and the way you're doing it, with a goal in mind. So the key with this is having that goal in mind. And with work, it's quite straightforward. Like, you know, I'm doing this and I would like to be doing this, so I get from here to there by telling everybody I'm doing this to get there, rather than asking people, how do I get from here to here? I'm just saying, well, I'm making the path, so this is what it's going to look like. If that makes sense, it becomes a bit more self-driven, as opposed to led, as opposed to following. And it's going to be a real challenge for me, because it's totally against my nature to take a lead, if you like, with. I say that hesitantly, because like it's more take a lead in my own life. I'm quite happy, you know, if there's like a something to be done, or a task or something like that. I'm quite happy to lead it. Quite happy if there's a project and that sort of stuff. I'm like, right, brilliant, know what to do. There's a beginning, middle, and end. Done. Or a particular goal to achieve. Let's do it. When it's for myself, I find it a lot more challenging to kind of, I guess, galvanize my various parts into the right direction. So we shall see.
I've got an image of you like going all different directions, like some wandering off over there, some
absolutely.
over there.
Some reading books, some looking at flowers. Yeah, it's chaos. Chaos, but it's chaos.
Beautiful chaos. Yeah. And I love that sort of like, come in, gather in. We're going that way.
I need all of you guys to come the same direction for once. Yeah. So we shall see.
No, I love that. I love that analogy of the NPC. NPC?
NPC, yeah.
NPC. Okay, non-playable.
Non-playable character. Yeah.
Yeah, and how? Go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say. So you know, for let's say you're playing a computer game, and you've got your own character that you're playing. You choose, you make all of the choices and decide where they're going and what they're doing, and then you'll come across a character that's in the game, and they might be, say, a fisherman, so they're just fishing all the time, and that's all they do. And they do the same thing over and over, and they never change it. They never go off on an adventure with you or anything like that. No matter how hard you try, whatever you say to them, they'll still keep fishing. And that's, I think, the point that my friend was making is that don't be like that. Be like the protagonist. Be the be the hero in your own story type thing. Again, I think I'm drawing on a lot of like Jungian stuff there, but there we go. We'll go with it.
We like it. I like it.
Yeah, just chuck it all in.
Yeah, yeah. And it feels like there feels in all of that. There's like mixtures of hope and fear and despair and all of like maybe resentment as well. I'm trying to also think about what I'm feeling as well, so I'm not just like all of that. And I guess that's in what you're saying about gathering everything as well. It's like gathering all those emotions, all those things, and like, okay, let's move towards here with all of that energy, with all of that, with all of that drive, without letting go of. Like, it's not just saying like, all that hurting part that just wants to watch flowers, or is on board as well. Like, there's no escaping that. There's no like just dismissing it and moving on. Yeah, maybe that's what I'm getting to in here, is that because I really loved that analogy, and I loved it more than just because it was fun,
more, there's a truth to it.
There's
a
truth of like, I can't go on without all of you. And I think the misconception in a lot of psychology or self-help or stuff is like, just leave them behind. Go ahead, leave them behind. You can, and you like as if you can. If you can.
It's like a part of myself. I can't. This is why we're here. Is because that this is what's needed.
And actually, they'll always be back there, and you'll always end up back there, unless you find a way of being with them.
Yeah, bringing everyone together.
Yeah. Which I think
this is good. I like this. Yeah, carry on.
And no, I'm just because this has been a powerful thing in my kind of therapy sort of thing. Of like, I've got to be with the hurting parts and like cry their pain and cry their, feel all of that. Because it's through that I'm going to start moving on. And unfortunately, the realization was that those parts will also always be with me. They might, and they will always feel to some degree what they feel. Like that scaredness or that hurt or whatever it is, and it's never going to be that I can outrun them.
Because they're a part of you. They're a part of your community that you have with you.
Yeah. I love how you linked it to, well, they're inside you. They're part of you. Of course, you're not gonna. Of course, you're not gonna be able to do it.
And it strikes me of like how similar that is to what we were saying at the beginning of how you'll have a family system, and you've got your family member that feels the anger, feels the pain, and so on. And internally, we've got that the part of us that is like the scared one, the part of us that is the angry one, the part of us that is and as you say, how easy we would feel it to be to get rid of any one of those parts, to leave them behind, but how impossible it is. So real challenge. You're working with yourself, and I suppose all of those parts, they're not all in the emotional part of your brain, or the thinking part of your brain, or the instinctive part of your brain. They're spread throughout. They've all got, I suppose, elements in each one, and so they at each time can be the powerful element in your psyche. Wow.
Yeah, I like that. It's like all of them can influence or can be part of your thinking, and all of them can pull you kind of lower down as well. Like, it's all, and yeah, and it's and just that, like, that strain, if we're trying to overwhelm one part, or if we're trying to just, pull one part of our brain harder, that's a real strain inside of us, that probably leads to sort of procrastination and all that, because then you don't have to deal with that strain.
It's very.
Yeah, I'm just thinking.
It's really complex, isn't it?
It is. And I guess I have one thought, and then I feel like we need to, like, I want to land it almost, of like, okay, so that's all the theory, that's all, and it's linked to experience. So what, sort of thing. But I was just thinking, like, that link between the outside family and the inside family. One thing for me at the moment is, like, what should I spend my time doing? I've only got a limited amount of time. What should I spend my time doing in order to grow my business? In order to grow my business, but also, like, just in my whole life. And what I realized was, actually, what's really important at the moment is that I spend time with my boys, my family. I can't, for me at this point, because they're still quite young, especially, maybe it'll keep on going, I don't know, but for me, I can't leave those behind. I can't leave that behind. And it's the same sort of thing, isn't it, within us, that I can't leave those maybe younger parts or scared parts behind, because they need me as well. So it's interesting how it kind of mirrors and parallels. And I think I find with that sort of thing is like, oh, I really do, like, in as much as I need to look after my boys and really feel that need tangibly, like, I really need to look after those parts of me as well, and hold them in whatever they're feeling. So where do we go from here, James? I mean, I guess, for me, a lot of this speculation can end up as speculation, or it can end up as resentment or despair that doesn't go anywhere. And it's just like, and almost like, I don't want to say excuse, because that's a bit pejorative, but almost like another excuse, or another reason, maybe another reason to stay in powerlessness.
To stay. That's a really good point. A really good way of looking at it. I really loved what you were saying there, just as sort of like as a side note, that where you related that, your inner self, to your outer family, and that, what keeps you and keeps any of us in our families and with our with people, is because we do love, and because we do love them. And so also what I would say, and I think would be important for people to hear, is that that inner family is just as deserving and in need of love, and our love, to heal, to be kept together. That's what works. And I think that it's probably the first part of the answer of so what, is the if we approach our inner self with love, rather than frustration and resentment, and like, I just can't, I'm just like, I always get distracted, or I always get this or that or the other, or always procrastinate, and like frustration and despair at ourselves, instead of approaching ourselves with love, well, it only beds us deeper into what we're doing. It only, and I haven't got quite the same experience, but I think of my nephews, and um, how quickly they are to sort of like get entrenched in certain ideas and certain ways of doing things, in if they are met with any resistance. So I'm thinking of you know like the way you work with a child and the way you work with and reason with a child is very, very different from how you work with and reason with an adult, because they're very, very prone to extraordinarily irrational bursts of peak. Where, so for example, they'll one of my nephews was making a fuss because he couldn't have the same thing that his brother was having, and just could not understand, that could not grasp it. So instead of like trying to reason and say, well, it's his, it's not yours, it's up to him if he wants to share that with you and not, and it's like a hard lesson to learn. You also have to use other techniques like distracting and finding other things and working around that. I mean, that's a clumsy example, but that's kind of what we need to do with ourselves and with our inner selves, is work with, okay, so this inner part of me that is either scared or whatever it is, it is a reflection, or it is a younger part. It's a really good way to sort of embody that, is see it as a childlike state, or a child part that is scared and needs reassurance, needs love, needs care. And how do you work with a child? You use play, you use soft language, you use different approaches, creative approaches that you wouldn't necessarily use with an adult, or you might, but work particularly well with children, where reason and rationale don't. So we can't think our way out of this, I don't think. That's a weird thing to say. Can't think our way out of this, I don't think. Yeah. So yeah, and I suppose it's approaching those parts of ourselves, like, there was this book, I think, called is it the chimpanzee brain, or the chimp and the brain, or something? It's a self-help book anyway. Somebody's bound to have heard of it before, and I definitely had a copy at one point. But it's about, like, the mammalian part of your brain being the chimp, and then you've got the human part of your brain, and the chimp is always going to be stronger than the human, but so it's working with your chimp rather than against your chimp, because you'll always lose.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's and I suppose, yeah, where I'm coming to you with this is the same sort of approach. It's like the child can't be reasoned with in the same way, but you can still work with them, and you can still get them to do what they want to do in a way that brings the power that's there, because they're very powerful emotionally, and can we direct that? And that sounds all very much like, oh yeah, I've got it all sorted. I don't do this at all. It's all coming out now as I'm talking.
I know. I know. It's great. Yeah, it reminds me of there were two things there. It was kind of like, well, a few, let's just say. It's going to be loads of things, James.
Pretty loaded, isn't it?
So I'll begin. One thing was like the gentleness you need when you're with that, with your nephew at that age. Like, you can't dismiss them. You can't say, well, just get over it, because they will just rise and escalate in their outburst. At least that's what happens with my kids. Or they just try and get attention in another way. They learned how. Like, you can't be harsh and expect it to go away. There needs to be this sort of gentleness and tenderness and understanding, I'd say, that you kind of meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
And then I loved what you were saying about the creativity or the playfulness in that. Like, it's not that you just go in with like, well, this is how it is, you know, it's your brother's toy. But there's a it's not like you're hitting them with rationality. Like, it's kind of like, and I think, you know, how would I do it with my kids? It would be, it might contain a bit of that, of like, well, it is theirs, so we're gonna have to leave it. But it's then like, okay, so what can we do, or what could we do instead, or just holding them, like, and just using, you know, I am actually bigger than them, and you know, realizing that I can hold their emotion, and they can kick and scream or whatever, and I can still hold them, and eventually that will calm down. I think that's quite important, that them recognizing that their emotion can be held.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, it's not gonna. I see it a lot where, and I do it a lot as well. So I'm not an expert in this at all, but kind of like we try and avoid the emotion, like we're afraid of all their emotion. And I guess this is maybe a different spin on the chimp and the human, in that I am who has the, and I can hold that. And I guess it's kind of thinking, is there a part of us? Well, there is a part in us that is a grown adult, and we don't need to be afraid of all this emotion. You know, it's not going to consume us. It's not going to go on indefinitely. It's not going to be the end of the world. But we can survive holding it. And sometimes we need to do that. Sometimes we just need to kind of work. I guess it's kind of working out, how can I meet the needs of this part of me in a different way? Like, we're as a family going that way, but this little part needs something in that. So how can I meet those needs?
Yeah.
And I guess sometimes, yeah.
It's a real tricky problem, because I think it's different every single time, I suppose. But there will probably be certain ways and certain things that you can do that will be similar each time. And depending on what that, and I guess it's part of it is discovering what the needs of that part of yourself.
Yeah, that's true.
What that part needs.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel quite sort of like it. You know, it sounds very good, but I'm very stuck with it.
Yeah.
Right, okay. How do I actually go about doing this? It seems like seems like we've got like so much analogy that I'm almost a little bit lost with it. Which is not to say I think everything that we said is really good and really powerful.
Yeah.
But equally, I'm like, okay, right. So next time I do set about doing something, which I know is going to happen later on today, how do I, with time not being the sort of like dictating factor, oh, I'm running out of time, I've got to do that now, which is invariably what happens. It's more, okay, can I think of another way of working with myself? So potentially, I suppose, you know, if I'm thinking of the parts that are holding me back as like the child part or the young part of me, what would that have normally responded to? Well, not very well to sort of like sense of punishment or anything like that. Just resented, would rise in resentment, and I don't think that's very healthy. But the concept of like reward or the concept of doing something nice or treating yourself afterwards might be a good way of looking at it. But then also following through on that. So I think that for me, like there's a sense of, you know, if I don't do the fun thing now, there won't be time for it later. But if I make it so that there is time for it later, like I have set aside, okay, for that hour or for that half hour, whatever, I'm going to do this, and it's just going to be for me. I'm just going to do it because I want to do it, because that part of me wants to do that.
Yeah.
So actually, I won't do it now because then I won't have time for it later. But if I do what I've got to do before that, then I've definitely got time to do that later. I'm going to have to try that.
Yeah, as you were talking
maybe
before.
that's going to work.
Yeah, as you were talking before, I love this. This is so real, isn't it? I love it, James. That
yeah,
it's kind of like this is what I'm going to face in a few hours.
yeah, very sure.
And I love that, which does make it. I think both of us like to live up here a bit more, or in the metaphor world.
Yeah.
So I think
it's not part of our shell.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What you were talking about when you were talking, I was thinking, oh, what does that part need in me, or what do those parts need? I think I was thinking about my children, and actually, what they often need is just attention, just somebody to sit down with them and work out, give them their attention, and work out something else that's fun for them to do. And I was thinking, okay, what might that look like? And I was thinking, well, maybe it's like a chocolate bar. How many times do I make things better with chocolate with my children? I mean, I try not to, but it's going to do the job. I know that when I need it. And so it's like, oh, well, what reward? Yeah, like exactly where you got to, really. Like, what reward? I guess I was thinking maybe not necessarily in your working time, but maybe in the evening. It's like, what reward do you give yourself that part really enjoys? Like, is it when you're being creative? Is it, I don't know, space to just conk out on the TV? Or is it, something that's a real reward that maybe you don't let yourself usually because you're still feeling guilty, or there's still that persecutory part that's like, you need to make the most of your time, and so we're still just kind of procrastinating away from that persecutory part. And I thought that was really interesting. That how often do I kind of half promise something to my children, but then I don't follow through on it. And then is starting to realize that, will start to realize that, and then not trust it, and then they're just going to keep playing up because they can't trust that it will happen. In other ways, yeah. So it's kind of like having to follow through, and it's like, okay, this adult part of me is trustworthy. I'm gonna do this for you when it gets there. That, yeah, kind of exactly what you said. Just all the thoughts I had behind that.
I really love that. I really love that. Yeah, and that. Yeah, I don't think you need to apologise about using chocolate. As far as I know from my observations elsewhere, parenthood is bribery and corruption all the way.
Yeah. And we wonder why we end up like this, James.
Well, exactly. And so we have to keep following through with what our parents have done with us, which has bribed us and corrupted us, and just really, really dig into that. Yeah, I think that's we've solved it.
No, I feel. I mean, I don't know if you got anywhere anymore. But I feel we've got as applicable as we're ever going to get.
Yeah, and the only thing I can say is that I'm going to have to get back to you on how well it works for me. and part of this is very dependent on me remembering. But
Yeah.
it's good, like particularly having a list of what I want to do. So I think for myself, like there's often a haziness with the goal that I'm trying to achieve, a haziness with what am I trying to do today?
Yeah.
And then a reluctance to look at that, because once I've looked at that, then I've committed. So
Yeah.
there's like a sense of commitment to that, and then so there are hurdles at each point. You know, there's hurdles all the way along, and then once I've decided, what to do today, which, as I say, it is a task in itself. It's then okay, make sure that I do have something that is like a reward at the end to ensure that I do achieve it, or to ensure that I get as much done as I feel happy with.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a challenge.
And I think maybe that's where we're not of the goals. The goal, that for me is where my faith comes in, of kind of, so that deep part of what is valuable, what is my life really about, what I want my life really to be, then what does for this time period. Like it's a goal that is just that's not going to be meeting what my life is really about. I might be able to do it a few times, but I'll soon lose patience with it, or lose any motivation towards it. Equally, there are layers in that of like, well, this might be what I really want, this might be the goal, but there's loads of other stuff going on that is trying to make it hazy, or trying to mystify it. But yeah, I wonder if that that deeper sense of what do I want my life to be about,
that's really good.
can then translate into a goal.
Yeah, and sitting with that for a little bit and just letting it almost percolate, but to an extent you kind of know, don't you? For myself, I think that what comes out most strongly when when you were saying that, was just a sense that I don't want my life just to be about doing the same old things all the time, but just to be being kind, being compassionate, being gentle, and that it applies equally to others as to myself. So in a big way, it's unkind for me just to sit and not do anything, because that holds back the parts of myself that do want to do something. And equally, it's unkind for me to not sit with the parts of myself that don't want to do anything, and for a time, because they need that time, they need that love and affection and reassurance, that I'm there for them. So yeah, I like that.
And my guess is maybe that you part of that kindness and compassion towards others is wanting to be part of them flourishing, or healing, or changing in some way. And I wonder if, like, that's speculation, that might not hit at all, but like, if that is so, is part of your, like, why not, why is that not part of being kind to yourself? Like that compassion, that kindness, in order that you flourish, in order that you become all you could be, or maybe not all, because that's a large pressure, but like becoming, if it's there for other people, why is it not there for you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a really valid point, isn't it?
Like, I'm just thinking, like, I guess I was thinking that compassion and kindness. What am I saying? Like, it's part of this. It's absolutely, and I know from our old like other conversations, that it's a real important part of who you want to be in the world, and how you want to probably shape the world as well in being like that. And I also wonder if it's, like, if I'm being kind, if I'm being compassionate, then it doesn't matter what I'm doing. It doesn't matter what I'm becoming, in any other sense. Or maybe it's what is the difference you want to make in the world? I don't know. Am I making any sense, James, or am I?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So it's almost like legacy to an extent, that you're talking
Yeah, and
about.
I guess I'm worried that like I might be well off here and not quite meeting you where you're at. Not quite meeting you in what you're actually saying, but like, can that compassion and kindness be another shell, or be part of hiding still?
Oh, I see. So it's sort of like it's what I want to like. I hide behind it because there's another part of me that wants something different.
Say that again.
That I hide behind it because there's another part of me that wants something different.
That you hide behind it. Maybe not that another. Well, yeah. That is there another part that's wanting to become, let's say, successful where we started. And like, I'm not at all saying success doesn't involve compassion and kindness. Like, and I think becoming successful could be being very compassionate and kind. But I also kind of think we have a part inside of us that wants to become, in order to make more of a difference. In order, and so, and I think back. I guess maybe this is where I'm coming from, and why it might be different to you. Like, I think back to me at school. Like, I tried to be very likable, very nice, somebody people could talk to, kind, compassionate. But that was and that was great. But equally, it was a way of limiting myself, or not going out of my shell and then being seen and everything. It was like, okay, but I'm still a nice person that has friends and like people value, and maybe I'm having an impact in their lives. But it was stopping me from having maybe
Making your
an
own
impact.
impact.
Yeah.
Being heard, being seen. Yeah, I think, and that's a very very astute thing to recognise, that certainly that's the case for me. That by being a supporter or a helper or an assistant, you're never I'm still in that NPC role. I'm not then taking my own command, my own making my own stamp. And to be honest, I think it probably comes back to what you said at the top as well about the suggested roles, family roles, or suggested the the family roles for myself. I've always been like in a position in my family of kind of overshadowed by quite dominant people, and not then expressing what I would like or what I want, and so becoming very comfortable in not having that, having a say or a, and so never practicing that, and never practicing I want this or I want that. It's like I'll go with the flow, or whatever's the easiest, or whatever doesn't cause the most disruption. You know, the peacemaker role is very much a non-combative, um, uh, a non-demanding, and sort of like, yeah. I think that probably captures it. Non-demanding. So I don't have like that practice in this is what I want, this is what I want to do, and being comfortable with saying that, and being comfortable with even knowing what that is. So that's why, you know, the whole hurdles of finding out what my goal is very, very challenging, because I'm so unpracticed, so unused to doing that. And yeah, it's very difficult to, like as we said, like to renegotiate those internal roles as well as external roles. Um, and when it's funny because then when I have said something that like, and this is just from my own observation, when I have been a bit more, what's the word, assertive, a bit more assertive with what I want to do, it's met with quite a lot of resistance in various ways, and I've seen it in different ways from both of my sisters, and then again more recently when I've been a bit more assertive or said, you know, I'm going to do this. Sorry, I just got caught because I just realised that there's been quite a few people who've challenged me on this fairly recently, on, you know, about saying what I'm telling people what I'm going to do rather than asking for permission, and that's a kind of characterized a lot of my life is asking for permission, or wait for somebody else to take the lead, rather than telling people this is what's going to happen and this is what I'm going to do. So yeah, really don't know how to change that. Yeah, don't know how to change that. Yeah. Interesting. Good observation.
Yeah. And that, you know, that can come back to this sort of all those feelings of despair and resentment and powerlessness as well, of yeah. And I think like there's always this balance, isn't there, of like we're always going to be holding this part of us that wants to ask for permission, and we're never like, you know, we're never going to escape it. You know, we'll always find that maybe that will be our natural tendency in a lot of situations. So in a sense, I guess, you know, and I guess maybe the language I've used recently is of being a failure. Like, in a sense, I'm always going to be a failure, or because I'm always going to have a part that's pulling me into that. But maybe there's ways where we can put in another part that, or another part of the story where, oh, but I have done it then, or I have, you know, failure isn't the whole story. It then becomes supplemented with other experiences around it, and so the whole person of James will become asking for permission, and in some ways not asking for permission, just going for things, and it will be a whole mix of everything. And for me, that makes it much more like it makes it much more real and possible, and also it's like what we've been saying about the whole family inside of us, that there is that part of you that wants to ask for permission, and you're not going to get rid of, like, in as much as you can't get rid of that part, you can't get rid of that part of being part of your story. But that doesn't mean there aren't other parts.
And new chapters to tell and new ways of being.
But also like new characters, I guess, is what I'm thinking. Right, like, because throughout your story there will always be that character who wants permission, but maybe there are other characters who have found the strength not to, or the courage not to, or and maybe it's like maybe it starts with your relationship with Jen, or maybe it starts with small things at work. It's just like, I don't care what this goal is. I'm just going to say this is a goal I'm going to go for because I want to practice, or I want a change of my story. And then it gradually, those characters start to maybe take more of a role in the chapters that come, or as important a role, or whatever, but they're there and they have a role.
I like that. And it's kind of, it gives potential for new shapes to form, for new things to occur.
And also, what you're not trying to do is the impossible task of killing off a character. Like that, until you die, you're going to have that character, aren't you?
So it kind of makes sense to let it develop, let it change, let it grow. Okay. I'm very intrigued by this. I'm very intrigued by this.
I think next week we should have a
definitely a recap.
A recap, and we'll no, I've really valued this conversation, James, and how real you've been. And I think, in as much as I say all that I just did, like, I know how much I sway between like wanting to do something, trying to do something, and then realizing that I'm sabotaging myself, and like despair, and like this will never change, and then a bit of hope, and like that's basically been my life for a long time. And like it's change, like actual change is really hard.
It's very challenging. It's very, very challenging.
Is there anything left for you, James?
So much, but so much. But I think we've definitely come to time. So yeah, it'll have to wait till next time.
No, I look forward to it then. I look forward to it. Great. Well, thank you for joining us. I've really enjoyed this.
Me too.
It's felt really real.
Very deep.
Great. And join us next week for an update.
Episode 2.
Episode 2. No, great. Okay, take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Right, we're doing this.